Let's talk about mean arterial pressure. Mean arterial pressure is the average pressure in the arteries. All right, it's a measure of your blood pressure. We normally use systolic over diastolic when talking about blood pressure. Mean arterial pressure, we're looking at the average pressure in the arteries throughout the body. All right, not the pressure when the heart is contracting versus when the heart is relaxing. So mean arterial pressure is proportional to heart rate times stroke volume times peripheral vascular resistance. Proportional means that we're not going to calculate any actual values here. Proportional means that if any one of these goes up, mean arterial pressure goes up. If any one of these goes down, mean arterial pressure goes down. So if something increases your stroke volume, well, that's going to make your blood pressure go up. See? And that's all we're going to do. That's all we're going to try to figure out in this case. Likewise, if something were to decrease your heart rate, then that will automatically decrease your blood pressure, all right? This is important because lots of drugs, lots of clinical situations will affect these factors, and we want to be able to predict how they'll then affect the blood pressure, okay? So remember when we talked about heart rate, we had the positive and negative chronotropes. These were things that affected the heart rate, either increasing the heart rate or decreasing the heart rate. So if we decrease the heart rate, then we will, a negative chronotrope, so if we have something that's a negative chronotrope, that will decrease the heart rate, therefore that will decrease your blood pressure, okay? That's the way we're going to do these problems. Once again, we're just going to look at the overall effect, not going to calculate an actual value. Remember with stroke volume, we had preload, contractility, and afterload. Preload was how much blood was in the heart before it contracts. If you increase the preload, that increases the stroke volume, that increases your mean arterial pressure. See? That's all we're going to do in these problems. We're not going to try to calculate values, just see the overall effect. Remember contractility. That was the forcefulness of the heartbeat, how forcefully it beats. Positive inotropes meant greater force. Negative inotropes were things that caused the heart to beat with less force, all right? And then finally, afterload. Afterload was basically the resistance to pumping blood out of the ventricle. What's going to happen here is, the reason I wrote this in red, is if we increase afterload, anything in red on here means that it's going to have the opposite effect on this value. It's going to have an inverse effect. So let's back up for a moment. If we increase preload, we increase stroke volume, we increase mean arterial pressure, right? Preload written in green. That means it's directly proportional. On the other hand, if something increases afterload, if something increases the resistance to getting blood out of the ventricle, that's going to decrease stroke volume, and that's going to decrease mean arterial pressure, all right? So anything in red, if we increase that, it will have the opposite effect on the factor that affects mean arterial pressure, all right? So we talked about those before, and I don't really have room today on the board to put all the positive and negative chronotropes and all the positive and negative inotropes. You had those in a previous whiteboard video. Today we're going to focus on peripheral vascular resistance, which is the resistance to blood moving through the vessels, all right? So the first one, blood vessel diameter. So notice I wrote that in red. What that means is if blood vessel diameter gets smaller, then peripheral vascular resistance goes up. Likewise, if blood vessel diameter gets larger, if the blood vessel gets bigger, that's less resistance. Resistance goes down. So this is one, again, that will be inversely proportional. Blood vessel length, that's the total length of blood vessels in your body, and you're thinking, how could you change that? Well, by adding more tissue. If you add more tissue to your body, that tissue needs a blood supply. So in this case, if blood vessel length goes up, peripheral vascular resistance goes up, mean arterial pressure goes up. Viscosity, the thickness of the blood, if that goes up, peripheral vascular resistance goes up, mean arterial pressure goes up. And then turbulent flow, again, think of a river, a nice big smooth river with water flowing freely, versus a river that has lots of rocks, that has rapids. When you got rocks, that's blocking the water, right? So turbulent flow If you increase turbulent flow, that's going to increase resistance, which will increase blood pressure, all right? Things would be like atherosclerosis. If you've got atherosclerotic plaques, that makes it less easy for the blood to flow, therefore resistance goes up, therefore blood pressure goes up, okay? So I gave you a homework assignment in which I gave you a bunch of examples. I wanted you to try to work out the examples. Let's do a couple right now. Let's say you eat a whole bunch of salty food, all right? Let's say you really pig out on salty food. You eat a whole bunch of chicharrones, okay? And have margaritas with salt all around the rim. What's going to happen in that case? Well, what of these factors would having a lot of salt affect? So if there's a lot of salt, if you're putting a lot of salt into your body, that's going to get absorbed in your small intestine, and it's going to be absorbed into the blood. So salt, sodium, is a solute. What do we know about water and solutes? If you absorb a bunch of salt into your blood, then water is going to follow. So therefore you're going to increase the amount of water in your body, therefore you increase the amount of blood in your body. Which one of these things would be affected by that? Well, if you have more fluid, more blood, that means that with each beat of the heart you're going to have a greater preload. There's going to be more blood in the heart. Therefore there's going to be greater stroke volume. Therefore your blood pressure goes up. Can you see why when people have chronic blood pressure, the doctor may tell you to cut salt out of your diet? You know, in the grocery store they have that section of the low sodium foods. Yeah. So if you're eating a lot of salt, you're increasing the fluid in your body. That increases preload, increases stroke volume, increases pressure. Then likewise, if you cut salt out of your diet, water in your body will go down, preload goes down, stroke volume goes down, blood pressure goes down. Cutting salt out of your diet or lowering the salt in your diet automatically is going to lower your blood pressure. See how this works? Now you can understand a lot of the recommendations for high blood pressure, for example. Let's look at another one. What if you know somebody who is doing cocaine? Don't do cocaine, kids. Don't do cocaine. But let's say you know somebody who does. What will be happening? Well, cocaine, remember, cocaine is an adrenergic agonist, right? So that means cocaine will be activating alpha 1s, beta 1s, or alpha 1s, alpha 2s, beta 1s, beta 2s, beta 3s. Are any of those relevant here? Let's take them one at a time. What do alpha 1 receptors do? Alpha 1 receptors increase, they vasoconstrict, all right? So what happens if you vasoconstrict with an alpha 1? Well, vasoconstriction is going to decrease blood vessel diameter, all right? Therefore, remember, since it's red, it's inverse, so that means peripheral vascular resistance will go up, and therefore blood pressure goes up. What else? Are there any other effects, any other receptors that cocaine, being an adrenergic agonist, would activate? Alpha 2s, you know, that's pancreas and platelets, not a big deal here. What about beta 1s? Remember, beta 1s are found in the heart, and what do beta 1s do? Beta 1s are positive chronotropes. Beta 1s are also positive inotropes. Remember, beta 1s increase contractility. Beta 1s also increase heart rate. So what's going to happen here? You're going to increase stroke volume. You're also going to increase heart rate. Therefore, if somebody does cocaine, that's like a triple whammy on their blood pressure, all right? Doing cocaine is going to constrict peripheral blood vessels. That will raise PVR. So positive inotrope, increased contractility, increased stroke volume. Positive chronotrope, increased heart rate. That's what happens. People sometimes who do too much cocaine end up dying of like stroke, heart attack, things like that, because their blood pressure goes through the ceiling. They end up in hypertensive crisis because cocaine, any adrenergic agonist, has a massive effect on your blood pressure, all right? So let's look at a couple more examples as long as we're here, all right? Let's try whatever I have written down next. Let's see about, what if you have aplastic anemia? Aplastic anemia People who are getting chemo or getting radiation for cancer, that affects the bone marrow, and that decreases the number of red blood cells, all right? Aplastic anemia, you decrease the number of red blood cells. Anything up here have to do with the number of red blood cells in your body? Well, number of red blood cells doesn't directly affect heart rate, doesn't really directly affect stroke volume. Anything over here? Yeah. More red blood cells means more viscosity. Less red blood cells, aplastic anemia, means you have lowered viscosity. Therefore, your peripheral vascular resistance goes down. Therefore, your mean arterial pressure goes down, all right? When my wife was going through chemotherapy for her cancer, she was just like out of gas all the time, just walking across the room. Part of the problem is when your blood pressure is low, you just feel, ugh. You hardly have any ability to do anything physical, all right? And that's, again, the aplastic anemia from the chemotherapy, decreased viscosity, decreased PVR, decreased mean arterial blood pressure. Low blood pressure just makes you feel tired all the time, all right? So, let's see if we can do another one. What about somebody who overdoses? They're taking a beta blocker, a beta 1 blocker, all right, for, let's say they've got some problem that requires them to take a beta 1 blocker. This happens sometimes with old people. They forget that they've taken their meds and they take them 2 or 3 times a day instead of just once a day like they're supposed to. What happens if you overdose on a beta 1 blocker? All right, so beta 1s, remember where are beta 1s? We just mentioned this. They're found in the heart, right? What do beta 1s do? They increase heart rate and they increase contractility. So if you're taking a beta 1 blocker, that's going to be a negative chronotrope. So this is in red, therefore it means it has the opposite effect up here. So overdosing on a beta 1 blocker will be a negative chronotrope, therefore lower your heart rate. And remember contractility, once again a beta 1 blocker is going to be a negative inotrope, so it's going to go opposite, so that's going to lower the stroke volume. And so you're going to get a double whammy on your blood pressure, all right? So, I mean, this is what's normally supposed to happen with a beta 1 blocker, but if you overdose, that means your blood pressure is really going to go down, because an overdose of a beta 1 blocker is going to lower your heart rate and lower your stroke volume, and that's going to really lower your blood pressure, okay? See how to do these? You just basically, for each example that I give you, that's the way you do it on your homework, you just figure out which of these factors is being affected by the example I give. Let's see if we can do maybe 1 or 2 more. What if you lose a lot of weight? You go on some kind of a diet where you lose like 30 pounds, okay? So losing weight. Well, losing weight doesn't directly affect your heart rate, doesn't directly affect your stroke volume. What about over here? Or do any of these have to do with losing weight? Yeah, remember, if you have tissue, you have to have a blood supply for that tissue. If you lose weight, you're losing that tissue, therefore the blood vessels go away. So what's going to happen when you lose weight? You're going to decrease the overall blood vessel length in your body. So you're going to decrease blood vessel length. If you decrease blood vessel length, this is in green, so that means it's directly proportional. If you decrease blood vessel length, you will decrease peripheral vascular resistance, and that will decrease mean arterial pressure. Do you see why, if you have high blood pressure, the doctor tells you to lose weight? If you lose weight, you automatically decrease blood vessel length, you automatically lower peripheral vascular resistance, you automatically lower your blood pressure, okay? So again, this is what I'm expecting you to do. Now let me point something out right now, and that is that these factors are generally independent of one another. So will something that increases heart rate, if you do something that increases heart rate, will that also increase stroke volume? No. Will that also increase peripheral vascular resistance? No. I see this mistake a lot on people's homeworks. So don't fall into that trap. Now it could be that there's some factor that will affect more than one of these things. So we just saw, for example, like a beta 1, receptor. Beta 1 receptors influence both contractility and heart rate. So in that case, any drug that works on beta 1 receptors will affect both heart rate and stroke volume. But it's not that heart rate affects stroke volume or stroke volume affects heart rate. There's something else that affects both, okay? So don't do that in the examples. In the examples on your homework, most of them will have only one of these factors affected, all right? Just because something makes this go down doesn't mean that this goes down, doesn't necessarily mean that that goes down, all right? It probably means only this goes down, all right? When you affect viscosity, it doesn't affect these, only affects this. So don't tell me that, it makes peripheral vascular resistance goes down, therefore heart rate goes down. No, that's false. That doesn't work that way, all right? These are independent of one another, generally speaking. So there you go. That should be a good introduction for you to try to do the homework that I gave you. Just go through and remember, always start at the bottom and work your way up. Don't try to start up here on the top. Find something down here that affects this and then that affects that. Find something down here and then work your way up. Don't try to start up at the top. That's the other mistake I see a lot of. So, want you to try the homework. You can text me or email me with any questions about your homework, okay?